We are at the state nature preserve known as Lawrence Woods. It is a pretty cool nature preserve in Hardin County, and it's got 500 acres of relatively old growth forest that we're going to see a small portion of today. It's rare in this part of the state to find a sizable forest of this magnitude that has not been extensively logged. There's some pretty old trees, some of which we'll get a glimpse of today. And the other interesting thing as we see here is it actually has an additional 500 acres as a buffer around it, creating a kind of insulating perimeter around this woodlot. So it does have a boardwalk. If you get an opportunity to get out here and see this, it is a relatively nice remnant of what was probably dominant in the state of Ohio previously. We go around here at the edge, we can see a lot of the glacial erratics that were tossed at the side of this woods when it was farmed around the periphery. It is a bright but brisk day out here, and we enter into the woods on this boardwalk. This is described as a flat woods, and the general elevational change in here is only about 5 feet. And it might not seem like a whole lot, but it's going to lead to some very different types of habitats, ranging from sometimes lowland swamp areas and vernal pools like we can see right here, to higher areas where we'll have beeches, sugar maples, white oaks, and you can see right there's a good example of a white oak up on a small little ridge, which differs from the red elms that we see down in this little vernal pool. So quite a lot of different habitat types present in this very interesting woodlot. First thing we're going to look at today is this species right here. This is, that we're taking a look at, we have spring beauties, which are very common throughout here, but we also have the Virginia waterleaf. And this Virginia waterleaf has a little bit different leaf dissection than what we've seen in other locations. Same species, just some phenotypic plasticity that we see with this individual. The light green you see sprouting up around here is probably one of the more inconspicuous spring wildflowers that we have. This is called false mermaid, and it has a very tiny white 3-petaled flower that we'll try and get some photographs of later, that hangs on the underside of this particular individual. So this is a huge patch of it, and as I said, most of the time it goes unbeknownst to people simply because the flowers are so minuscule in nature. So well carved, unfortunately, American beech right there. This is one that we have seen before. This is spring cress. Should be a brilliant white color. Has a close counterpart, purple cress, which isn't quite as white. It's a little bit more dull white to purple color, a little pinkish. So, a very epic white oak known as the rhino tree. This is probably a trail guide. It was bent by Native American tribes, and if you look at it on the map, it actually serves to connect two former Wyandot Indian encampments. And so what they do is bend a young sapling as a guide, and it kind of grew up in this particular shape. You can see the head and the two horns of this fairly old white oak tree. First shot of another iconic spring wildflower. You can see the heart-shaped leaves developing here. This is wild ginger. This is not, even though it may taste like it, this is not the ginger spice that you utilize in cooking or ginger ale. It is actually has carcinogens in it, so you want to avoid eating it, but It is a cool wildflower. The flowers are probably not out yet, and we'll talk about them later when we start to see them to develop. We don't have a tremendous number of ferns in our area, but this is a cool little tiny one known as the fragile wood fern. You see it right here. We get the camera into position. You can also see that this frond has the characteristic fiddlehead or crozier that's starting to develop here. We have white trout lilies out. Here's a really nice one coming into bloom right here. And we've seen their counterpart last time, the yellow trout lily. Notice once again the nice downward pointing petals that kind of protect the limited number of pollen that's produced by this individual. Walking along the boardwalk at Lawrence Woods, once again, you can see we've moved in kind of the beech maple component here. Good beech tree ahead. Lower areas once again containing water tolerant species where these vernal pools develop. And this slight elevational change gives us a bit more rich composition of spring ephemerals and hickories, such as the shagbark right there, black maples, black cherries, sugar maples. Very cool, massive vernal pool. On a warmer day, it would be deafening with chorus frogs, peepers, green frogs, leopard frogs. It's a pretty vocal display area, but today's sunny, but pretty chilly out here. Low 40s right now. Big button bush swamp. Only on really dry years does this one particularly go completely dry. Most of the time this retains water. It's probably 8 or 9 feet deep out in the middle. A big head. And there are tons of tadpoles in here. Hopefully we got some video clips, and there's also eastern newts that live in here. You can see the plants on the surface. This is actually our smallest flowering plant, known as duckweed. And these large shrubs that haven't leafed out yet are the button bushes. So there's a ton of biological activity going on in this very cool buttonbush swamp area. In the base of this red oak, we've got some trout lilies, some spring beauties, and one of the last few flowers of a sharp-lobed hepatica coming on here. It's also a weird little structure here. This is from last fall. This is a oak gall, which is a tumor-like growth that develops on oak leaves because of insects that lay their eggs in the leaf. Another cool view, you can kind of see the tilting of the boardwalk as we go once again from a little bit higher elevation down into some of these vernal pools and more swampy habitats. It's a remarkable change in microhabitats here as we go just a few feet up and down in the different types of plants and animals that make their home here. One cool location in this woods is an area that in a few weeks will have even more yellow in it, and one of the primary yellow flowers is this guy right here. This is a marsh marigold. So they're kind of rare, like these swampy thicket areas, but not super common throughout the state. This is a juvenile stage of the eastern newt. This is the red-effed stage of the salamander. It's kind of unusual for the juvenile stages to be terrestrial, but this guy will move around until it finds a new pool to move into, and then it'll metamorphosize into the adult stage.